For our first Justice in Fashion dinner, fundraising dinner, primarily to mark Anti-Slavery Day, but also actually to celebrate our 38 weeks since Justice in Fashion was formed. And during that 38 weeks, my goodness, the team have been tireless and passionate and phenomenal, and we've done so much. And I can simply hear it in my voice as to how much we've done in the last 38 weeks. But as I say, we're primarily here to celebrate Anti-Slavery Day and to mark Anti-Slavery Day on Sunday. A massive thank you to all of you. When we talked about this 3 weeks ago, which is when we first came up with the idea of this fundraising dinner, I had the notion of the Ritz Hotel, ballroom, you know, swanky clothes, black tie. Alas, I've got Zoom, and we're going to go with it. And I'm really doubly thankful that you're all sitting there. I think some of you are eating. I can definitely see the Mahapatra Godfrey's there eating. Godfrey Mahapatra's eating. Forgive me. Everyone else is being actually very elegant over screen. So I want to say doubly thank you, because it is probably our better things to do on a Thursday night than come and sit with us and stare at your screen for yet another hour and a half. But I also want to say thank you to our speakers, who I will introduce more formally in a second. I've harassed them mercilessly in the last 2 weeks, and they are still here. Incredibly, they're still going to do their presentations for us. So I am really, really thankful to the four of you. And I'm equally thankful to our sponsors of the night. So we had Jenny Betts London, Happy Larder from the lovely, lovely Leanne Duffield, Plant Pops, which is a lovely snacks in those goodie bags. And for those who are on the Boris Johnson side of the pond, you had Tony Chocolonely, and the Donald Trump side, you had Divine Chocolate. And I'm going to say, for those who are really quick off the mark and booked your tickets early, well done you, because I think you've got your goodie bags. For those of you who are a bit lazy and really couldn't be bothered to book until this week, yeah, goodie bags may or may not be on their way. That's all I'm saying. And I also want to add, I really hope that you all got your chocolate, because our very lovely director, Jennifer, who painstakingly put these gift bags together, has a massive penchant for chocolate. So I can't promise that you've all got your chocolate bars. No, she's got them. She's still got them. So you may have all the everything in those goodie bags except those chocolate bars. I just warn you. But no, a massive thank you again. A couple of housekeeping rules. Everyone is on mute. Thank you for that. I will be inviting people to speak at some point, and at that point in time, we'll ask you to unmute yourselves. If you want to ask a question, I'm going to say raise your hand, but don't actually raise your hand because I probably won't be able to see it. So do your little chat thing on the bottom of the screen, or just give us a question and one of the team will try and grab that question and we will ask that of the speakers. The order of play. Well, the order of play tonight is me gabbling on for a few more minutes. I will then introduce our speakers. I'm then going to hand it over to you guys to all introduce yourselves, and no one can be shy on this call today. I'm going to ask you, just give your name, where you're from. I'm going to exclude the speakers from that though, because I'm going to do a very formal introduction for them. But also why you deigned to join us on a Thursday evening when you probably could be watching Netflix or doing something, I don't know, a little more fun than marking Anti-Slavery Day with us today. After that, well, I'm just to quickly give you an example. So I'm going to say Sharon Benning-Prince, lawyer, activist, COO of Justice in Fashion. Basically have to be here because I am hosting all of you tonight. But on a more positive point, I'm passionate about abolition of modern slavery, female empowerment and supply chain. So that's why I'm here tonight. But then we're going to have our speakers. We're going to start with the lovely Audrey, followed by Corban. We're then going to have a really short 5-minute interlude, and I'm going to try and make this dinner as similar to a real life physical dinner as I possibly can. And you're going to have to bear with us on this because we're going to really try. We're going to try and make it interactive. We are going to try and have those awkward moments when you're sitting next to someone you really don't want to talk to, and we're going to put you all into breakout rooms in a 5-minute interval. And you're probably going to hate us for it, but you're all going to sit and you're going to have to chat just for 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes only. But if you need to go a wee, get some tea, shout your kids, go do that instead. But we're hoping to see a few faces in that breakout room because it's a chance to network, just chat, maybe just pontificate over what you've heard already. Or as I said, just run off and get a cup of tea or something. So, and it's also 5 minutes to give our speakers a tiny bit of a break. So after that 5-minute interlude, we will move on to Molly and Olly. I like the way I did that, Molly and Olly. And then you can all ask questions. We will put 2 or 3 questions at the end of each speaker's presentation. But then those we haven't actually answered will collate at the end. Try to answer them. I will be trying to finish promptly at 8:30. And then our really lovely speakers have said that they will stay on for 10 more minutes to host their own breakout room. So if you want to continue talking to them or talk to us, we'll be, some of the Justice and Fashion team will be in those breakout rooms as well. If you're too shy to ask a question in this more public platform, then you just go ahead and you ask it in that breakout room right at the end. So I just actually have a very quick aside that I have to add here. I clearly have a very fervent JIF follower on LinkedIn who clearly watches everything that I do, which is slightly scary. But she asked me 2 nights ago, she said, I've watched everything you've done. I'm loving what you guys are doing. Can I please ask a question? Do you always wear House of Bouchkin dresses when you are doing a presentation? I hate to say yes, I am again tonight. And this is being recorded. So when my very fervent follower, who can't be on this dinner tonight, when she sees this recording, I'm telling you now, Jeff doesn't pay me commission. But Jeff, if you do, I like a free dress, you know that. So I should say I am wearing House of Bouchkin again, and it aligns with everything that Justice and Fashion stand for, our sustainability, slow fashion, and literally, everyone knows that I'm obsessed with House of Bouchkin. So on to more serious matters. When I do my after dinner presentations, I often do a little Quizlet. After a 3-course meal, most people really don't want to hear me talk about modern slavery for 40 minutes. And so I do this to make it more fun as much as I can. I do a little quiz all about modern slavery. So it's not your normal fun pub quiz. There are no prizes at the end. But I physically go round the room and I prod people when I see them starting to fall asleep, which inevitably occurs whenever I do these after dinner speaking events. I can't physically do that to you tonight, unfortunately. But what I am going to do is do a poll, and we're going to do a quick gander of our knowledge of modern slavery. So we've got 3 questions. I'm hoping Ruth isn't going to bring up the questions in a second. We've got 3 questions, and I'm going to gauge how much everyone knows about modern slavery. So it's a really ABC multi-choice question, easy. So the first one is, in what year was slavery officially abolished in the UK? I do feel like I need to do a countdown music thing here, but everyone's pressing, although I can't see anything yet. Oh, one's voted.
I feel like it's a trick question though, one of those, Sharon.
Oh, Molly, come on. You should know this.
Yeah, I think there's 2 answers to one of them.
Oh, there might be. Clever girl, but don't give it away. Everyone's thinking, we're just coming in here for dinner, a bit of chat. No, gosh, she's making lots of questions. Oh, basically everyone's doing all the questions. We have a 3rd question, I think, after this. Ruth, is that right? Do we still have a 3rd question?
Yeah, you just need to scroll down, I think.
I know, I don't think I've got that ability to do that yet, have I? Wait a minute, let me do that as well then. Has everyone voted on the first one? My maths is terrible. 16, 18. No, we're still waiting for that poll to come in. Come on, some of you are being shy here. Who's being shy? Okay, I'm going to now scroll down because I think we may have the answers there. Oh, look, everyone's done it. So I'm now going to end the polling. I'm hoping that I'll see the responses at the end, Ruth, is that right?
I'm hoping that too.
Okay, let me see. What do you know what? I'm just going to write the answers down on a little sheet of paper very quickly so I have got everyone's answers. Gee, you are a clever lot, you lot, aren't you? Goodness me. Okay, right. I thought it was going to be quite tricky. Clearly, everyone knows a lot about modern slavery. Oh, there we are. So how do I share these results? I'm going to share these results here. Okay, so Molly was right. Number one was a trick question. What year was slavery officially abolished in the UK? Well, there are actually two answers, quasi two answers. It was officially abolished in the UK in 1833, but transatlantic slavery was abolished in 1807. So there's 17 of you who said 1833. You don't get a prize, but you may give yourself a little clap on the back. Despite the abolition of slavery, how many millions of people are estimated to be trapped in some form of slavery around the world today? Now, I really wish it was only 1 million. And equally, I only wish it was only 20 million. The answer, of course, which is the prevailing one, is 40.3 million. That number is the International Labour Organization number of 2016. And increasingly, and I feel very strongly about this, that now during this pandemic, once we open up borders and once we see the levels of poverty cycles, I think that that number will substantially be much higher. But that 40.3 million is as at 2016. And in what year was the world leading UK Modern Slavery Act passed? Well, it was 2015, so actually incredibly recent. We all have our thoughts on the Modern Slavery Act. Those I work with very closely on that have varying thoughts on that legislation. But since the whole boohoo issue, and even prior to that, lots of those provisions are being reviewed, especially the transparency provisions for supply chain. So we now await and see what comes of that and where that's amended. So the reason I asked everybody about what they knew about modern slavery is because it's really the discussion. This was a discussion that a few of us were having when we first formed Justice in Fashion. A few of us were sitting together and we were talking about the work we've been doing in modern slavery and exploitation. And out of that, we could see what was starting to happen with COVID and the pandemic. And it led us to go on and form Justice in Fashion. And in essence, Justice in Fashion was incorporated or formed to prevent an amplification of poverty and to mitigate an outbreak and abuse of women in low-wage countries working in the RMG industry as a result of COVID-19 and future emergencies. This basically translates for us into our 3E ethos. Our 3E ethos is empower, engage, and educate. And in the last 38 weeks, and hopefully this will continue, our educate limb, we have been talking to consumers, to individuals, talking to them and trying to teach them about their impact of the choices that they make when they purchase. My joke aside about House of Bouchkin, yes, I do wear a lot of House of Bouchkin, and I've known for the last 15 years what they stand for. It's easy for me to have that opinion because I've been educated in that for a very long time, probably since I've been a student. Fast fashion is so easy to purchase. It's so accessible. And we're just trying through our education limb to make people aware of what they're doing and the consequences and ramifications of buying fast fashion. I know Olly's going to touch on that a bit more later in his presentation. And it's something actually that one of our directors, Mel, on International Day of the Girl, she participated in Festival of the Girl, in which she talked about fast fashion. And that was to a group of year 7 to year 9 pupils. So already we're trying to educate at an earlier stage. are engaged, Lynn, through our research, through our workshops, our collaborations. We're trying to reach out to investors and stakeholders and brands and say to them and reteach them about the current model that exists in the supply chain. Currently, it's very, very heavily beneficial to investors and directors and brands. And our engagement limb, we're trying to embrace speaking and working with those stakeholders so that we can re-look at that commercial and financial model. And our empower limb, I think, for want of a better word, is one of my favourite limbs. It's where we're empowering workers to find their real voice and to give them a platform where they can really drive what their needs and wants are. We have a phenomenal Voices platform on our website where we've collaborated with NGOs such as IJM, the Madar Trust, Freedom Fund, amongst others, who have just given us access to voices pre-COVID, during COVID, and still are allowing us to hear what the real voices of those workers are. And in doing some of our work, we're trying to bridge the gap that currently exists between what workers really need and want and what currently the existing supply chain model enforces on those workers. So all in all, in the last 38 weeks, 32 weeks even, the team have done a phenomenal job. We've been driving all of these 3 E's. It's our ethos that we're really trying to push. And I want to just say, firstly, thank you to everyone who gave a donation tonight to be part of this dinner, because everything we're doing on a pro bono basis. So all our team have just worked purely at the goodness of their own heart and everything we've done to date. We do have expenses and we are still raising funds. So if you want to donate, we will greatly appreciate that, be it on a monthly basis or one-off, whatever you choose after this dinner that you feel has touched your heart. But this work is really important to us as a team, and it's no small miracle that actually we have got such a massive team and have managed to accomplish so much in 32 weeks. So, and I think my voice says it all because I'm clearly losing my voice tonight. But I do want to say thank you to my team for that. And thank you again for everyone for joining us. So on to the main part. Yeah, I'm just a side part here, but the main speakers. So I've got tonight 4 very favorite people for Just in Fashion. We've got Audrey Migot-Adholla, who is the founder of Yala Jewelry, the first jewelry company in the UK to become a certified B Corp, and that is no mean feat. So that is a phenomenal thing. And we are slightly in love with Audrey. She was our first interviewee for our Insta Live. Phenomenal. And that's why she's back here again today, because we love what she's doing. Another favorite, Corban Addison, is the best-selling author of several books, including Harvest of Thorns, which was the Just in Fashion book club book. So, and again, we love him so much. We are running 2 more book clubs before the end of this year, and again, using Harvest of Thorns as our book. He is an attorney, an activist, a world traveller, and he supports many humanitarian causes, including supply chain transparency and abolition of modern slavery. Another really lovely friend of mine who you will hear after our 5-minute interval, the gorgeous Molly Hodson. I've worked with Molly for some years now at International Justice Mission. She is the Director of External Affairs for International Justice Mission, which is one of the largest international anti-slavery organisations in the world. To date, they've worked with police in several different countries and have freed over 55,000 people from slavery and oppression. And I have been very lucky to be one of their international advocates for some time now, and a phenomenal organisation. And last but not least, Olly Kennedy, who is a former actor who now dedicates his time to the design of radical ways to address modern slavery, both in the UK and in the Middle East. I'm just going to make a very sort of quick point here. We haven't given our speakers any set framework for tonight. So we just said, you've got 10 minutes, go say what you want from the bottom of your heart with passion, love, as long as it's about modern slavery, supply chains, transparency, no rants, please, about US politics or anything else, which I know is close to everyone's heart right now. But it literally, these are 4 phenomenal speakers. And I have to say, I've had the privilege to speak to every one of them, hear them speak. They've got so much to say, and it comes all from the heart. So I'm really hoping that alongside me, you're going to really give them a massive welcome and can really enjoy what they have to say tonight. But before we start with Audrey, I'm going to hand over to Ruth, because we're now going to do our 30-second introductions of ourselves, if that's all right. Ruth?
Hi. Okay. I am going to be pinging along your screens, asking you to unmute at certain points. So when you see that, can you please take 30 seconds to introduce yourselves? Okay, here we go. Let's see. Jennifer, I've asked you to unmute. There we go.
Okay, I'm Jennifer Roschak, and I am an attorney, US qualified, but I live in the UK now, and I specialize in business and human rights. I am also a co-founder and director of Justice in Fashion, and I'm here tonight because Sharon said 3 weeks ago, we said, we need to do something for Anti-Slavery Day. And we have such an amazing team that we were able to put this together, and just so excited to be with all of you tonight. And thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, Jennifer. I am moving on to Jazz.
Ruth, I think we've lost Jazz just for a few.
That's fine. Leanne, can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Leanne. I'm founder of Happy Larder Co, which is the teas that those of you who received your little goodie bags would have got a retail pack and a sample pack of. I set that up at the end of last year, and the profits, it's a for-profit business, but the profits go to help women who have been through domestic violence and human trafficking. So obviously this is a topic close to my heart, so we were very happy to support tonight's event.
Thank you, Leanne. Can I get Mel to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Mel. I'm one of the co-founders of Justice in Fashion and one of the directors. I've also a founder of my own charity called Freedom 2. We work with girls who are at risk of exploitation in East London. And I'm here tonight, obviously because I'm part of the team, but because I want to learn more. So, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Mel. Megan, can I ask you?
Hi guys, so I'm Megan. I'm a final year undergraduate at Cambridge studying geography, and I've loved being a part of Justice in Fashion. I've worked with Jen to roll out the book club, and we're really excited to get more of those events going out later in the year. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Raj, can I ask you to introduce yourselves?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
I'll go let Hannah go first.
No, I'm Hannah, and I'm a teacher, so anything with education in the title has my interest. And this is Raj.
And I am a recovering lawyer. I was once a lawyer, and you're always a lawyer in that case. I'm currently a general counsel. I'm acting chief operating officer for a AI company that is focusing on climate volatility. And I'm here in the room because I've known Sharon forever, and I love the passion she brings to projects she's involved with. And I think that she and I think an awful lot on the same lines about justice in the world. And yeah, Sharon, I'd follow you into flames if necessary, but Justice in Fashion made complete sense to me.
I'm confirmed, you really would.
Thank you, Raj. Can I get Marie Wattier?
Hi, I'm Marie. I'm French. I'm in the US. I am mainly interested in circular economy, circular fashion, practically conjuring things if we don't tackle social issues. This is why I am part of shifting and what's next.
Thank you, Marie. Can I ask Jeff now?
Yes, you can. So hi, I'm Shof. I'm the founder behind two women's wear brands, which we collectively call House of Audrey. Thank you very much, Sharon. And you're right, we're B Corp, which means, Audrey, you do know that, we're good people. We're a good company. We take things very serious. And I'm just very happy that, you know, we'll find this cause so important and have this incredibly excited group of people committed to this cause. I actually knew the 40.3 million roughly because I knew another horrible stat, which, you know, made me think it's got to be near the 40 million, which is 1 in every 130 women or girls are in slavery, which is an unbelievable number. So it's shocking whatever way we look at it. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Carrie?
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Kerry Bannigan. I'm the founder of the Conscious Fashion Campaign and also a founding member of the SDG Media Zone. My line of work is all around raising awareness and advocacy of the Sustainable Development Goals with the United Nations. I am here. I was invited by Erica after just working with her to do some comments and panel with the British School of Fashion, and I'm huge fans of Audrey and Oliver, so would not skip this no matter what day of the night it is, and I'm really excited to learn more.
Thank you, Carrie. Ramesh?
Hi there, my name is Ramesh Maharaj. I'm a corporate and finance attorney. My reason for joining the call today is simply to learn more, which is clearly evident by the fact that I'm wearing a Nautica t-shirt for this call. So it's not certainly something I've got a lot of information about or certainly education about. So I'm hoping to leave today with certainly a much more fulsome understanding and appreciation.
Thank you, Ramesh. Tony?
Hi, hello everyone. So I'm Tony. I'm a co-founder along with Mel, Sharon and Jennifer of JIF. I'm actually a former police detective, so surrounded by so many lawyers, I'm getting very, very nervous even though this is online. But it's a pleasure to see everyone. So my background now is I have a company called Illustro, and we train criminal justice practitioners on how to investigate human trafficking. And that's mostly in developing countries. And this is Tina.
Hey everyone, really happy to be joining you guys tonight and look forward to getting to know you and learning more.
Thank you. Vignette?
Hi, I'm Vignette. I'm a student at Samara University in Twickenham, and I'm doing a master's degree in human trafficking and organized crime. So I'd love to learn as much as I can about modern slavery. I've been a part of the Justice and Fashion team for a few months, and I'm really excited about everything we've been achieving so far and hopefully what's to come.
Thank you. Kate?
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm managing director of a textile design company based here in London. Jen is a great friend of mine, and I'm here really to learn more about what you guys do.
Lovely. Thank you, Kate. Paul?
Yeah, hi, I'm Paul Williams. I provide consultancy services to a number of different companies, mainly with a financial services background. I'm a friend of Sharon's, so one of the reasons for being here tonight is to support Sharon. But the other one is that one of the companies that I'm part of provides training and services to the police industry in the UK. We're hoping to expand that out past into other countries in the world. And I just thought that this subject might be something that we could look at as providing training and extra information to the police, and that's one of the main reasons I came on tonight.
Lovely, thank you, Paul. Fiona?
Hello, my name's Fiona Freund. I'm a photographer. I feel sort of slightly in a whole other world here. I also do a campaign called Mother Works, which raises awareness about the conflicts that working mums have to deal with, balancing life and home and everything else. I met Sharon when she was speaking about modern slavery at an amazing event that the Circle organised, and we made friends, and I've been helping in my own small way to get justice and fashion looking fabulous, if I can.
Thank you, Fiona. Helen?
Hi, I'm Helen Gavorek. I'm an associate professor at Durham University. But when I had a real job, I worked in the fashion industry as a design manager and as a buyer. and my research focuses on sustainable fashion. So I'm interested to find out about how modern slavery really maps onto the areas that I'm researching into, and I was invited by Erica.
Thank you, Helen. Could we get Anu, please?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Anu Menon. I'm the founder of Freedom Row. I'm currently developing a tool that uses AI and artificial intelligence and Internet of Things to mitigate and identify modern slavery in supply chains. I just love everything that Justice in Fashion has been doing for the past 38 weeks, and Sharon and the team have been an amazing support for us. So very, very happy to be here tonight and meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Anu. Jonathan?
Hi. Ruth reached out, so anything that Ruth is involved in is usually good quality. So I clicked on. So I too am an academic. I'm a head of a department in Kingston School of Art, and I used to work in London College of Fashion. And justice in fashion is obviously an oxymoron. And as I get older, I get angrier. And the gap between what fashion says it does and what it does is massive. And so I'm all for supporting anyone that attempts to reveal that, as long as you're angry enough to activate and intervene in the current practice. And I would like to involve my students in doing so. Anyway,
thank you. Tina?
Hi, everybody. Hello from Brussels. I'm Tina, and I'm an anthropologist, a researcher, and sustainable and ethical fashion writer. And I occasionally write for JIF, so that's why I'm here. Very excited to meet you all, really interesting people here. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here. But another reason is because Anti-Slavery Day is important for me personally. My personal sustainable or slow fashion journey started when I spoke to a former forced child labor in a garment factory, and I'm thanking to her. Everything I've done is basically because of her.
Thank you, Tina. Jo?
Hi, lovely to meet you all. Thank you for having me. I'm here to learn. I'm passionate about slow fashion, and I'm also the investor and director of a pre-owned designer resale site. So it's all about encouraging everybody to buy pre-owned fashion rather than buying new fashion.
Thank you, Jo. Erica, who's in her car.
Hello, sorry, yes, dinner on the go, as they say. So yeah, my name's Erica. I'm a lecturer at the British School of Fashion and also a member of Justice in Fashion. So very excited to be here this evening to hear again the lovely Audrey and all the other speakers that we have tonight. And yeah, my research is in modern slavery around communication. So how do we communicate to the consumers to, you know, reset their behaviors? So yeah, thank you so much. Great to be here.
Thank you, Erica. Kelly, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelly Dalton. I'm a sustainability strategy specialist. I usually work with kind of high-end luxury brands, helping them to develop those big, broad sustainability strategies that you see with the visions, goals, missions, and all the targets they put in place, and then helping them to develop programs to deliver on those targets and then to report and communicate impact. I'm particularly interested in modern slavery just because beyond brands having to put out their modern slavery statements that are never audited every year, I'm not hugely familiar with the very specific detail about what's actually happening on the ground. I mean, I've covered the Circle reports and things like that, but I'm really interested to learn more about the detail and then how we can apply that to my work with brands. Yeah, so thank you for inviting me, Sharon.
Thank you. Okay, I think that is everyone. Has anyone been missed? If so, please unmute yourself and jump in. Otherwise, back to Sharon.
Thank you, guys. I've just seen from our chat, we've had a few people who've had to leave, unfortunately, and the lovely Belle Jacobs of Extinction Rebellion is unable to join us tonight as well, but she is also a massive advocate of what we are doing. So so she sends her apologies as well, as does another member of our team, Marie. But thank you, everyone. That is what everyone says there is incredibly insightful as to what everyone wants to glean from tonight. And I hope we can hopefully provide, or the speakers can provide, the information and knowledge that you're all desiring to find tonight. So I'm going to start with Audrey. Audrey Migot-Adholla. Audrey, over to you.
Thank you, Sharon, and good evening, everyone. My imposter syndrome is loud in my ear. For those of you that I haven't met, which is most of you, thank you so much for coming. For those who don't know, I'm from Kenya originally. I've lived in the UK for a very long time, and I didn't start. I did not start thinking to myself, I want to have a jewelry business when I grow up. My background is I'm an analyst by trade, if you could say. I've worked in corporations all my life, and Yala Jewelry is a side hustle that got out of hand, and it's become a bit of a running joke that this is never where I was supposed to be. But something that Jonathan said in his little intro was actually the first line of what I wanted to say, which is that when it comes to issues of ethics or sustainability, or indeed modern slavery within fashion, and I'm using that as a big umbrella because it covers, apparel, footwear, jewelry, all of the different things that encompass fashion. If you're not angry, you're not paying attention. So many things happen right in front of our noses in the things that we buy and wear, that we will either turn a blind eye to or just be willfully ignorant about. I understand at times the reasons why that happens. I've talked to lots of my friends and tried to understand, do you understand what you're doing when you shop in Primark? And their answers are illuminating and point out my own hypocrisy at times. But when I think hard about how we got to a stage in global capitalism where there are some people who have so much and some people who have nothing and are indeed working under slavery conditions, the root of all that evil, I believe, is shareholder primacy. I have a business degree, and I've sat in lecture rooms where I've tried to understand how you can have a system that benefits. It's like a pyramid gone wrong. Everyone at the bottom is doing all the work and taking all of the risk, and the benefits are being enjoyed by a very small group of people at the very top who don't ever have to look in the eye the people doing the bulk of the labor. And that's how exploitation happens. Not to mention the need to constantly cut costs in an effort to increase profits. And this pursuit that we have, Greta Thunberg talked about it when she was at the UN, endless fairy tales of perpetual growth, to which I would question, to what end? And I fight with my mum about this a lot because she used to run Johnson & Johnson East Africa. So she's very, corporate hat is welded onto her head. And I'll always say to her, but why do you need so much profit? What for? Surely you reach a point where you've capped what you actually need and the rest is just greed. But to give you some background on Yala Jewelry and how we do things, I started off making all of my products by myself as a hobby. It eventually grew to the point where I couldn't make everything on my own anymore. I didn't have the time, which is a nice problem to have. And so I naturally thought of artisans back in Kenya who I could give work to and say, look, why don't you make the products for me? But of course, being here in the UK, doing that by remote control can be quite difficult. So I started off reaching out to brands much larger than me that do a lot of private label work and saying to them, perhaps you could make things on my behalf because you already have an established network of artisans in Kenya. And very quickly, I realized that a lot of the numbers didn't add up. They were charging huge sums of money, but couldn't tell me very much about how this work had benefited the artisans. And to give you some stats, since we're doing stats and data, which I love, there are 60 of the total global population, 60% of the people work in what we call the informal sector. In Kenya, the number of employed people or rather the percentage of the workforce that are working in the informal sector is 85% of people. And so you can understand very quickly that if you have people who are unbanked, who are not taxpayers, who don't live in, you know, registered formal settlements, the propensity to exploit those people because they don't understand their rights, and they also have no idea what you're selling the product for on the other end, they can absolutely be exploited and perhaps be paid slavery wages that don't allow them to thrive. And so having put aside those middlemen, me and my mum decided to go and find these artisans for ourselves. And one thing I always tell people that they're always so shocked by is that once we've agreed on, you know, we've been through the prototyping and sampling and all that jazz, and we've agreed that this is the product we want, we're happy with it, how much are you going to charge me as a per unit cost? And then I don't negotiate. I don't negotiate because I know that whatever price they've told me is what they deem to be fair. So who am I to say that's too expensive? Because I can't make it for myself, and I've sought them out after all to make that product for me. The other thing is that you realize very quickly that if you allow for full transparency in both directions, so any of the artisans I work with, they have my phone number, they can text me, they can call me, FaceTime me, whatever. I pay them directly. Luckily, Kenya has really good mobile money payment infrastructure in place. And so I pay them directly from my bank account to their bank account. So I know they got all the money. And then it's really interesting when they tell me what they did with the money, because people working in the informal sector typically have quite extensive networks of family dependencies. So the person that you're paying to do the work might have several other people and households depending on them. And we did some research with one of the groups that we work with, a group of Maasai women, and there's 150 of them in total that work in this workshop at any given time, but they're not all there at the same time. But because of their family dependencies, there are 300 additional households that benefit from the work that those ladies do. So you start to understand very quickly, if you pay people over and above the average, because paying people the minimum wage, no one can survive on minimum wage, we know that. That's a fallacy, and I'm not sure why it persists. Second of all, if you pay people even a living wage, given how many dependencies they have, it takes a while for them to actually feel the impact of what you're paying them. So if you go out of your way to figure out what those thresholds are and exceed them, you start to see very quickly people start to thrive. If not, they will end up in trapped in the cycle as survival entrepreneurs. They don't get to grow. They don't get to benefit really. They're just kind of hamsters on a wheel trying to survive from one day to the next. Nor can they fully participate in the economy. And so my goal with Yala, and this is part of the B Corp ethos that you sign up to when you become a B Corp, is I want all of the artisans I work with to grow their own fledgling businesses to the point where they register a tax-paying, with a bank account business in Kenya. They graduate, if you like, out of the informal sector into the formal sector so that I can continue to work with them. But none of this works without transparency. And becoming a B Corp was, it's not exactly the stick and the carrot, but for those who don't know, B Corp is a certification that is issued by a nonprofit called B Lab. And being a B Corp means that you have met the highest standards of transparency and accountability and ethics in what you do. And it means that you hold all of your stakeholders equally. So you don't have shareholder primacy, you don't favor any one stakeholder over the other, and everyone has skin in the game, if you like. So you have to consider people, you have to consider the planet, you have to consider everything down to the type of packaging that you use so that you can understand how every part of your business impacts any of the places that it might impact, whether that's people or planet. And so with regards to the slavery piece, I can't imagine a scenario where, I hope, touch wood, I can't imagine a scenario where there would be anyone within my supply chain, because of the ways that I'm held accountable by organizations like B Corp, but also because of my own moral compass, nobody in my supply chain should be suffering. And the rule of thumb that I keep for myself is that if anyone has suffered to bring my product to market, I've done something very wrong, very, very wrong. And even though, my company is tiny, I don't employ anyone apart from these artisans. but I like the fact that they know me and I know them. I've met their families, I've met their kids, I've met their wives, I know where they live, I visit them. I love the fact that we have such an open relationship, because it means that there are no skeletons that are going to start, you know, forming in the virtual cupboards in the ways that we do business with each other. And with that, I'll stop talking, otherwise I'll go on all night.
Audrey, thank you so much. I just want to say, does anyone have any questions for Audrey? Goodness, we are a silent dinner guests, aren't we? Audrey, I'd like to ask, is someone putting their hand up? I can't actually see.
Just trying to find out how to do that on Zoom. I've forgotten.
Ah, Jonathan, no, then just put your hand up physically, because I can see you.
Sorry. Thank you, Audrey. How complex and lengthy was the B Corp certification? How rigorous was it? Because it's early. How long has it been going? Is it early stages?
That's a really good question. B Corp's been around for a while now. I forget exactly when they were founded, but if you've ever heard of a company called Elvis and Cressy, they were one of the founding B Corps. And there's also a distinction that's made between B Corp UK and B Corp in the US, but companies like Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and a bunch of others. I mean, it's growing all the time. When I certified, I had a page on my website saying 2,500 other B Corps, and it's now 3,500. So I have to update it all the time. But to answer your question, I am a very tiny, small company. I had been in operation for 1 year by the time I was starting the certification process, and it still took me 6 months. And I know that there are lots of companies that have to do it in pieces, because their organizations are so large and so complex that they have to kind of do it like a department at a time. There's a certain French conglomerate that has had to do their dairy section first, then they're going to do waters, then they're going to do the other one. But the rigor that's applied to it is such that the way, I mean, for anyone who's interested, go onto the B Corp website and look for the impact assessment. Anyone can do it, it's free. There's 80 something questions. And they're tailored so that no matter what kind of organization you are, whether it's a products-based company or a service-based company, you will find questions within there that relate to what you do. Once you've done the impact assessment, you then are assigned a caseworker from B Lab, who will then ask you to verify the claims that you've made. So whatever claim you make, you have to back it up with proof, and that proof can take all sorts of forms. Some of it might be video, some of it might be documents. One of the key things that they ask people to do is called a mission lock, which is where if you're a UK-based company, you have to go onto Companies House, find your articles of association and pass a special resolution where you change the wording to show that the purpose of your business is to benefit all the stakeholders involved and not just the shareholders, because by default, the articles of association of a company put in the shareholder primacy piece. It was very rigorous. It was very hard because I didn't know anything and I didn't have anything. I had to go and write a bunch of policy documents that didn't exist. I had to put in place things like progress out of poverty goals. I had to put in place supplier evaluation questionnaires and lots of other things that are brilliant to have now because it forms a good framework for me. But the other thing is that once you certify, depending on what score you get, it also gives you a really good roadmap and what's that word? Aspirations of where you're trying to get to and where you can improve within your business. Does that answer your question?
It does. It sounds excellent. So we need to mandate it. We just need to say all fashion businesses have to be. Well, I don't know, they need variations on it. I'm very interested in the power of kite marks.
Yeah.
To evidence the behavior of firms. So
yeah. The key thing to remember about B Corp is that unlike fair trade, which is still brilliant, no shade toward the fair trade community, fair trade focuses on individual products like coffee, bananas, tea, what have you, cotton in some cases. B Corp looks at every single part of an entire company. And I think that's why more people haven't done it. Number one, it is hard. It's really hard. It takes a long time. Number two, I think some people in the process of doing it realize how many skeletons they have. And so they don't want to progress. But yeah, I'll stop talking. Otherwise, I'm going to take up other people's time.
Audrey, thank you. One little thing. I think.
Oh, sorry, Jeff.
I think Audrey is the most amazing way of explaining and selling B Corp. I mean, you could have worked for them. It's fantastic. And Jonathan, you're right. I mean, the whole world, every business should become a B Corp, and we are crusaders for it. But just to put a context on how difficult it is, First of all, it's not 80 questions, it's something like 320. It's like a rabbit hole, it gets bigger and worse. 100,000 companies have tried it since 2015 and only 3.5 have got the certificate. It's that hard. And you're absolutely right, because I think even not being able to get there, the discovery of the skeletons and what you need to accomplish, the journey itself is important.
Jeff, I hadn't actually realised 100,000 companies had endeavoured to get the B Talk certification, and only 3,500 have actually achieved it.
Yeah.
Well, Audrey, Jeff, I'm going to take my hats off to both of you. Audrey, my love, can we move on to Corban, and we'll come back to you in the breakout room if that's okay. I'm now going to introduce Corban, who is the author of Harvest of Thorns, as I said, our book club book of Just in Fashion. Corban?
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me? Am I on? Excellent. It's a delight to be here. I love doing these sorts of things, and I'm delighted by the work that JIF is beginning to do, and I can't wait to see where it goes in the future. I'm going to try to hew ruthlessly to my prepared remarks because I could spend half an hour talking, and I definitely can't do that. So I want to frame this as broadly as I can, and then we can zoom down and talk about, get into the weeds a bit. The global consumer economy, at least prior to COVID, was supposed to account for roughly $28 trillion in annual sales. I have no idea what next year is going to bring, but I wouldn't be surprised if post-COVID it bounces back. It is the greatest engine of global economic activity. It's the spending that makes the world go round. But as I like to say, the whole edifice, the entire global consumer economy is built upon a very elaborate illusion. That illusion is that the things that we love to buy and wear just magically appear on the shelves in front of us and online for us to purchase. Imagine yourself walking your favorite store or pulling it up on the internet. What you see in front of you are beautiful things that are actually inviting you to imagine a world that doesn't exist. It's a world in which you've parted with your dollars in order to buy those beautiful things. But of course, that picture is really only half of the picture, if that. It's only half the truth. What the brands don't tell us is where their products came from. They do not intentionally, quite intentionally, do not tell us who made them and under what conditions they were made. If we had the chance to look behind the veil, I think the truth is that in most cases, we would be deeply disturbed by what we see. In some cases, we might even be horrified. Almost everything that we buy and wear, and it's scary to think about this, but literally almost everything is touched in some way, and often in many ways, by human abuse or environmental abuse. A couple of examples. Imagine migrant workers, Bangladeshis, who came to Malaysia to work in fashion factories. I've met some of them. And many of them are forced into conditions of forced labor. There are child laborers working on cocoa farms in Sierra Leone. Imagine the economic devastation, the environmental devastation caused by gene production in China. There are some rivers that you can actually see from space that run indigo from the dye. We're also talking about things like injuries and death from in the informal sector in the production of leather goods. Some of the chemicals that are used to cure leather and the way in which often children and young people are working to cure leather is devastating to the human body, to skin, to respiratory systems. Of course, all of this is invisible to us as consumers, and all of that is quite intentional. That is, that it is invisible. The brands don't want us to look at it. And of course, as consumers, we really don't want to look at ourselves. All of us are in one way or another implicated in this illusion. I am and have always been an iconoclast, for better or worse. And as far as I'm concerned, it's time to break that illusion. We need to start telling the whole story about where not just clothes, but all of the products that we love to buy come from. It's time for the world to really face the true cost, especially the hidden cost of these products and of fashion. And that is what the book that I wrote, A Harvest of Thorns, is all about. The inspiration for the book, there are a lot of different dimensions of that, but there was one primarily, and that was, I don't know if you all recall, in 2012 in Dhaka, Bangladesh, there was a fire at the Tazreen Fashions factory. It claimed the lives of over 115 workers. Most of them were young women. Hundreds more were injured in the blaze. And what was really, beyond the horror of it, what was fascinating is that it was almost a direct repetition of history. Back in 1911 in New York City, in a building that is now part of NYU, that is New York University, there was a fire at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory that claimed almost the same number of lives, also immigrant women. And there were pictures that arose. It was early in the photographic age, but there were pictures that arose from that fire that almost looked exactly the same as Tazreen. When I came across that story and that comparison, I realized that that would be a really compelling way to begin my story, a fictional story that would go deep into the supply chains of the fashion industry. One of the things I found fascinating after Tazreen is that the New York Times conducted an investigation of the fire and found that 2 American-based companies, Walmart and Sears, had clothing in the factory at the time of the fire. Both of them had been doing business with Tazreen for years, but when they were confronted with this, they denied that Tazreen was an authorized factory. They said, "We don't know why our clothes were there. They shouldn't have been there." I remember reading those New York Times stories and thinking to myself, that's impossible. They must have known. How could they possibly not have known? That was one of the big questions that I wanted to answer in doing my research. So I decided to use Tazreen as a kind of historical frame for the story that I would write. But I didn't just want to tell the story of the fire. I wanted to tell the story of the company that was implicated by it. How would a massive multinational company with global supply chains respond internally to an incident like this? What if the media had pushed harder than the New York Times did after Tazreen? What if people inside the company actually decided to investigate their supply chains and find out if the fire was an aberration or if it was a part of a larger problem? What would they do if they found skeletons? And would they consider changing their business model? Could workers, injured workers, bring a lawsuit against the company? I'm a lawyer by training, though I'm no longer practicing. I'm always interested in the legal dimensions. And ultimately, what amount of pain would it take to force a company like this to change? As I discovered in my research, the answer is it would take a whole heaping pile of pain to cause that kind of fundamental change in thinking. So when I did my research, I was fortunate to be able to go all the way around the world. I went to Malaysia. I mentioned that before, and met with victims of forced labor who were making athletic apparel for US brands, even great brands like Adidas. I went to Bangladesh and was fortunate enough to meet some of the survivors of the Tazreen fire. It was one of the most haunting days of my life, the interviews with those women, mostly women, and listening to their stories of jumping out of 5th and 6th floor windows and losing consciousness and being dragged out of piles of dead bodies and taken to hospitals where they had suffered permanent disabling injuries, and then being kicked out of the hospital after a couple of weeks for lack of funding, and then ultimately being forgotten by the world and barely receiving any compensation for a number of years. They were horrifying stories. I was also able in Bangladesh to tour a number of factories. It was critical for me to see on the ground. I got to tour some good factories, some not so good factories, and do interviews with owners and supervisors, buying agents, auditors, basically people at every level of the supply chain there. That's the second largest garment producing country in the world after China. After Bangladesh, I went to Jordan, which is an intriguing country, has a free trade agreement with the US, which means that quite a few companies in the US source their clothing from Jordan. The ILO has a better better work program there in Jordan. I was able to speak to the folks at the ILO and also with some people in the NGO community there that do investigations in the factories. Beyond that, I did quite a few interviews by phone and also back home in the US and in the UK with folks who have a deep knowledge of the industry. What was really interesting to me is that I've done a lot of research for prior books all around the world. I've never found it harder to get people to talk to me than when it came to trying to get brands to open their doors and speak to me about the challenges of supply chain management. Actually, it wasn't until that I completed the book and it started to get read by people that folks in the brand started opening up and saying, hey, actually, this is accurate. And let me tell you what my experience has been. I want to share just a few of the insights that I discovered doing my research. We could go down rabbit holes for days about any of these, but just a handful that I thought I would share here. One is that the answer to the conundrum that I asked at the beginning, how could Walmart not have known, or at least claim not to have known, that their clothes were in Tazreen at the time of the fire, lies in the extraordinary complexities of subcontracting in the fashion industry. So the brands and their buying agents deal directly with the top tier factories. These are the biggest factories in any country, the ones with the export licenses. They are the ones that are the cleanest factories. They usually have sophisticated safety systems. They pay their workers reasonably in a lot of cases. They generally are not the abusing factories. They often have highly sophisticated facilities, like I saw a water treatment facility in a big top tier factory outside of Dhaka in Bangladesh. These are the factories the brands love to talk about. They're the factories the brands and their representatives and their agents love to visit, because they make them look good. But the reality is that the sourcing system involves many layers of subcontracting factories. The deeper you go, the worse it gets. And the sourcing system is rigged really in favor of the brands. The brands set the price, the brands set the lead time, and factory owners are basically reduced to yes men and yes women. If they say no, they lose future orders. If they say yes, they have to figure out how to make the orders work for them. And with margins that are so thin, I mean, razor thin, very often what happens is top tier factories will subcontract out part of these massive orders, a certain number of the pieces, to others, friends they'll call up informally. And often then the second tier factories will subcontract out part of their work to other factories in the third tier. And sometimes you even get finishing work being done by women and their children in homes. Like if you have sequins on a dress, I don't mean to scare you ladies. My wife has many sequins on dresses, but every single sequin is sewn by hand. And in fact, sequins are very often sewn by the children of informal workers in the home, which is something that, brands don't want to talk about. And in fact, they really don't see. They see the original order and they're supposed to be told about subcontracting that happens down the chain, but almost, very few factory owners forward that kind of information onto the brand. So in fact, there is plausible deniability. Walmart might not have known that Tazreen was making clothes for it on the day of the fire. Now, there is one element of this that
Corban, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Corban, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to cut you off, I'm afraid.
Oh, no.
Running slightly.
Did I go over?
I'm actually going to ask if anyone has questions of Corban to keep until the end or go to the breakout room with Corban at the end, if that's okay. I apologize profusely, but I already think it's 8:10.
Yeah, it's true.
We are planning to go out into our breakout rooms just for 5 minutes.
Sure.
And if you have questions for Corban, we will be doing the breakout rooms right at the end with each of our speakers. Ruth, are we able to go to our breakout rooms just for 5 minutes?
As soon as I hit this button, everyone should be pinged off to their room. Okay. See you back in 5.
See you back in 5.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming back. Back over to Sharon.
That was super quick, those 5 minutes. And Paul Ramish was asking me a question as it was just, and we got cut out. I'll pick that question up with you at the end if that's okay, because I think it was a really good question you're about to ask. But I am going to very quickly and hastily move on to Molly from IJM. So we are trying to stick to time as much as we can. Molly?
Okay, I'll be good.
Thank you.
Good. I'm going to share my screen to show you some pictures. One of them isn't that nice. I'm just warning you in advance. But yeah, tell me if this works. Hopefully it will. Can you see
Super.
this?
Yes, it has. Thanks, Molly.
You see it?
Yep, we can see it.
So yeah, thanks so much for having me, everyone. Justice in Fashion, super excited to see where this is going to head. Imagine, great, can you hear me? Yeah? I'm hoping you can hear me. Can you hear me, Sharon?
Yeah, we can hear and see your screen.
Right, great. Yeah, firstly, thanks everyone for having us. IJM is really excited to see what happens with justice in fashion and just really championing what you do. Want to see you have huge success in that. So yeah, I work for International Justice Mission. We're one of the biggest international anti-slavery organizations in the world, and we're really passionate about ending slavery in our lifetime, which is obviously quite a big undertaking. So yeah, but so excited to hear so many of you on this call with like legal backgrounds and even in police and fashion. We really believe this is going to be a collaborative effort to see slavery ended. IJM's basic model is that we have investigators, social workers, lawyers, activists all coming together, and our investigators will work around the world to go and find out where slavery is happening, and then we'll work with police to build cases, go on rescue operations with them. We have social workers who help to restore survivors, and then we have lawyers who help to prosecute traffickers and slave owners to disrupt that whole business model of slavery, to make it untenable, to see deterrence go down, and justice systems actually working to protect the most vulnerable people. So that's kind of how we work, and we work on lots of different issues. We work on slavery, but we also work on things like violence against women and girls, and police abuse of power. So big wide range of things, but I'm going to narrow focus in on forced labor in fashion. Sharon's already told you how many people are in slavery, so we'll skip over that bit. 40 million, but 25 million people in forced labor slavery globally. And for me, like, one of the facts that like massively shocked me when I heard it is, according to Ethical Trading Initiative, like 77% of UK businesses think there is a likelihood of slavery in their supply chain, which for me is just like absolutely mind-blowing, and something that I just don't think many people are really aware of. Like, I think even before I worked in this area, you know, think, yeah, there could be slavery in chocolate or in, you know, things like coffee, maybe clothes, but you don't realize the extent of products that are touched by slavery. And Corban talked a bit about that. So I kind of wanted to use my section to bring it home and to tell some of the stories of like what really means. And this is Chandrama. She's an amazing woman from South Asia. She's a campaigner on stopping forced labor slavery. She's a member of the Released Bonded Laborers Association. And the Released Bonded Laborers Association is groups of survivors of bonded labor who've joined together to like make some noise basically locally to advocate for the end of forced labor in their area. And some of the groups that IJM works with in the RBLA have seen like over 250 people rescued from forced labor slavery. That's survivors like basically working with police to rescue other survivors, which is just like pretty phenomenal, I think. And but for Chandrama, like her life wasn't always like it is now. Today she's a wedding planner. She's living with her kids, and things are kind of going well. But This was Chandrama last year. If you look at the image on the right with her and her little boy, so she was working in a silkworm factory for fashion, and she basically was trapped for 6 months and locked in a small cell where she was forced to work for 16 hours a day. Constantly be making decisions about whether she would use that to hydrate her and her son, or whether she would use it to bathe him to try and get rid of some of the sores that had developed on his body. Like, this is the like brutal reality of what slavery actually looks like in the fashion industry on the ground. And this is like why we need to act. You know, she was saying that they pleaded to get let out, it just didn't work. She actually thought about ending her life, but she didn't because of her son. This was during a period last year when IJM supported the rescue of like 161 people from silk farms, and the image on the left of the hand is what happens when you are forced to touch chemicals without proper protection. And this image actually, I sort of tossed up whether I should show you because I think it's pretty disgusting. And but I also think it's really important we are the reality. So I'll move on so you don't have to look at it too long. This is the day, so that image before was Chandrama as we found her just before she was rescued. This is the same day when she's just found freedom, which is amazing, and so like a really much more joyful picture. And so like moving on, like what's it looking like at the moment? What's the impact of COVID? What we've seen is a lot of exploitation, like rising exploitation. This is a group of migrant workers. So we've seen, as you probably heard, lots of headlines about migrant workers not being allowed to return home. That's something we saw a lot of during the height of pandemic. This is an image that was actually sent to a newspaper in South Asia, where this group of young women were pleading to be sent home, and they weren't allowed. Technically, they should have gone home. They should have been allowed to, and they weren't. And they were being deprived of food. They weren't being paid. They were desperate. They basically said, if we died here, would anybody actually find our bodies? It's pretty bleak. And they were so desperate. They'd been sending videos to friends and family and stuff of their like conditions, but they couldn't do anything. So they ended up actually sending them to a newspaper who published their story. And as a result of that, IJM heard about their story, and we worked to go and find out where they were and took that case to the authorities. And then we went to free, with the authorities, to free what we thought were going to be 22 girls. But it actually turned out to be like over 150 people who ended up being returned home as a result of that. I mean, I think kind of I wanted to pause and be like, what amazing women to just like battle that hard for their own freedom, but like at the same time, like horrific that they had to do that in the first place. And this is them actually on their way home, which is, you know, incredible that they and the government actually paid to take them home. So yeah, JM's model is all about like mending justice systems and supporting police, training police, find and detect slavery and to do something about it on rescue operations, how to then prosecute slave owners successfully, and cases through court. Slavery decreased by up to 86% in some of the places where we worked. And I think that, like, I really want this to give everyone on this call hope that change is actually possible. That when we see like businesses, justice systems, NGOs, us all work together, that we actually can see massive decreases quite quickly in the prevalence of things like slavery. So just to sum up, how will we see it ended? Well, like, although business has an absolutely core role to play in looking at transparency and stuff, as Corban said, quite a lot of the time a business will only be able to see the first or second tiers of their supply chain. And once you get right down to the bottom, they probably have very little idea what's actually happening, which is why it's absolutely fundamental that the governments in the countries that people are sourcing from are enforcing the laws against slavery. Like, slavery is basically illegal pretty much everywhere, but laws just aren't consistently being enforced. And actually a role of business that people often don't really think about so much is the voice that business can have to governments in the countries that they're sourcing from. And so like demanding better protection for workers, better protection from law enforcement when it goes wrong, and actually being confident that when you report a crime, like where you're suspicious that slavery might be happening, that something will happen. So what we think is important is businesses to do not only looking top down, but actually thinking about how do they help support from the bottom up, creating places that aren't where slavery is much more unlikely to exist because justice systems are working effectively. So yeah, government protection vital, stopping the impunity that makes slavery possible, businesses taking action through action, I put on here, which is not my most eloquent phrase, and transparency and advocacy. And I think another key thing I really wanted to just point out too is we really believe in the importance and power of survivor voice, which I know is something that JIF is so behind. The group on the right of this photo is the newly formed Global Survivor Network, which IJM has just supported the launch of. And these are people who've experienced all kinds of different violent oppression and abuse, including slavery, who are using their voices to inform policy and programming on issues of violence, because those voices are so often missing from the table when you're designing programs or policies to try and tackle these kinds of issues. And yeah, these are some of the voices that hold the keys to actually ending these problems. So yeah, all power to survivor voice. Want more survivors to be equipped to be able to do that. And then finally, all of us. We all get to be part of raising our voices using what we've got in our hands. And I'm just really encouraged by the caliber of people on this call from across lots of different backgrounds, academics, lawyers, police. You know, we really believe that, and fashion as well, you know, that there's just, when we all choose to raise our voices, to use what's in our hands, we will see change, and that is possible. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say for now, but thank you for your time.
Molly, thank you very much. You said something really, and I know we need to move on to Olly, and I am going to ask that if anyone has questions for Molly to go to the breakout room right at the end. But you said something really substantive there, and that the voices of the survivors, the voices and equally the voice of the workers, those are key to change. And yes, we are very much aligned with IJM in platforming those voices, because actually ultimately all of us here can make change and all of us can make a noise, but it's when those who really are the ones who are the victims or are at the source of exploitation, it's when they make their voice heard that actually change can really be elevated with the likes of ourselves as well. Molly, thank you so much. I, again, have always seen a number of slides that you have produced over the years, and I have to say they all, even after all these years, still make me feel extremely sad and angry, as John referred to earlier. So I think, you know, anger and that passion hopefully will push us all forward. Last but not least, the lovely Olly Kennedy. Before we go to Olly, I will, after Olly, wrap up very quickly, because then we will have our breakout rooms, and so everyone will have an opportunity. And I can see just from the comments that you guys seem to love that 5-minute breakout room. So at the end of the dinner, I will, after Olly, give my thanks again, but we will swiftly then go to the 15-minute breakout rooms with your speaker of choice and go forth and pontificate with them. But for now, I'm going to now leave with Olly.
Thank you, Sharon. So, friends, old and new, I am going to take my 10 minutes, but I can promise you that I'll do everything I can to make it worth your while. If you've had the gallery view on, you may have noticed that I've been furiously making notes throughout the evening, because I'm trying to do this on the fly, really. I'm gonna try and sum up and synthesize and bring what some of the other speakers have said together. I think I'll do something a little bit different, and I might try to be a little bit provocative, but I'll warn you just before I do that. So I won't spend any more time telling you about the horrific aspects of modern slavery. You know, those who spoke before me did that so eloquently. I think I'd much rather spend some time with you trying to work through a problem I have. And if I can be completely transparent, I don't have the answer. I don't know what the answer is. This is a little bit of thinking out loud for me. The problem I have really is, why don't people care? Or rather, why don't more people care? Erica mentioned this before about, I hope she's still here, bless her, on the train, about communicating with others. And Corban said, you know, before as well, nearly everything is touched with some form of exploitation. So why don't more people care? And out of that obviously comes the question, how do we get more people to care? Now, in these types of talks, I've observed that there's almost this untangible phenomenon, right? And it's perhaps occurring even now, you know, all these wonderful events, you sometimes feel as though you're preaching to the choir, as someone's just said, preach. Well done, Audrey. Now, yeah, it does feel like you're preaching to the choir, you know. Everyone on here is most likely already a superhero, you know. You've all considered some aspects of modern slavery, I'm sure. Even Sharon mentioned a little bit earlier how clever we all are, which is very kind of her. So it's not necessarily us, it's not necessarily you who needs to be educated or encouraged to change. It's everyone else. Everyone else is the problem, right? But here we all are. We're all in agreement that it's a terrible scourge on, you know, the human conscience. Yet we alone can't do much about it, really. We are but too small a group. But I don't think our time tonight is wasted, because I think this evening we can actually start something powerful. And how apt on, you know, the eve of Anti-Slavery Day on Sunday. I'm going to come back to this a little bit later on, but if we 30 people can make some form of commitment this evening to each other, to mobilize that sort of human desire to transcend who we are as individuals and dream of something bigger, a better future, a better world for ourselves and for others, we can really think about making a dent in this issue. And I think that together we can work out a way to help others care. And I have 3 suggestions, or I think I have 3 suggestions of how we can do this. Now, they come from both my previous life as an actor, and I'm quite into political philosophy. And the thing that separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom, you know, the thing that really makes us human, is our ability to engage in speech and dialogue, right? So think about it, the sheer depth of skill we have in communicating with each other, discoursing over a common topic. It's not really found anywhere else in the world. The ability to talk about topics and engage with this melting pot of ideas in a common sphere where you argue your case, I argue mine. I think that's perhaps the greatest tool that we have, and the greatest tool to change the minds of others. You know, Aristotle, Greek philosopher, wrote about this years ago. And even before the ancient Greeks, we all sat around the fire and we all told stories. So my first proposition really is that by engaging in speech as human beings and telling better stories, I think that's our path to help others care. Now, I am reluctant to say this with Corban watching. I'm trying not to look at him, but I'm going to suggest 3 ways. I don't have a book yet. If I did, you'd see it there. I'm going to suggest 3 ways that we can tell better stories. So number 1, first thing is, when I say stories, I don't mean repeating what we read in the news or see on the TV or anecdotes from our friends. I'm referring to stories that put the human being at the center, exactly like what Molly just did so beautifully. I feel sometimes that we get lost in the data of modern slavery. You know, 40 million across the world, 25 million in forced labor, 100,000 in the UK. And yes, data is massively important. What the data does do is help us understand the scale. But what it doesn't help us understand is what it means to be enslaved. It doesn't describe fingernails on the back of metal doors in Ghana, like a friend of mine found. It doesn't describe the desperation that one feels when you're sitting in unwashed clothes for 6 months on a farm in Norwich. And it doesn't describe the callus or the damage to the fingers that Molly just showed with, I forgot her name, but that lovely woman on the slides. Our stories that we tell must move towards the human being. And I've just picked up on something at the beginning. I think Tina is a living example, with Tina, wherever you are, of exactly what happens when the human story permeates into your life or into the life of another. I'm sure Fiona, as a photographer, understands the power of the individual as a human being in telling a story. And I think Tony, I hope I can call you Tony, you've been on the front line as a police officer, I imagine. I'm sure those stats don't really matter when you're faced with a room full of exploited people or an individual. They become the most important thing, not the stats that sit behind it. Yes, the stats have a place, but I really think we need to start talking about human beings. Now, number two, that was only number one. I promise I'll get through them. Number two, this actually speaks to something that Erica highlighted for me before. Telling better stories, you can think about it in three different ways: the head, the heart, and the hands. When you appeal to someone's head or their brain, you appeal to their intellectual capacity and their ability to rationalize reality and join the dots between evidence, right? Appealing to someone's heart pulls on literally their heartstrings and ignites some sort of emotional connection or ignites emotional connectivity to the issue, I should rather say. But what I've observed in my time working in the modern slavery space is that often the conversation stops there. We rationalize the bad things, we connect to those who are exploited on some emotional level, whether it's through children or family or some other means, which is all wonderful. But we then forget to continue into the hands. What is it that we actually need to do? Now, if we don't cover what that person should do or what we need to do in a tangible manner, we have a wonderfully constructed discussion and movement, but the movement has no legs, the movement has no energy. We're not going to get anywhere if we don't actually do something about it. So straight away, the challenge for us all here now and for the rest of this evening and tomorrow morning, while you're still thinking about it, think about what you as an individual and we as a collective with Justice in Fashion can actually do. But on the other side of the coin, however, we do still need to go through the previous two stages, the head and the heart. So if you don't engage the rational brain or intellect or whatever else we're going to call it, we bound forward with almost reckless enthusiasm. We know what we want, but we're not quite sure what the plan is, and it's not really that well thought through. Or rather, if we fail to engage with the heart, we fail to engage with the emotional connections of the issue, we pursue some form of, I don't know, let's call it disjointed action without a true care or a true connection to the outcome. So essentially for number two, I suppose what I'm saying, if we can build holistic narrative models that encompass head, heart, and hands when we tell our stories, I think we set ourselves and each other up for success. Now, number three, who do we tell these stories to? This is a difficult question for a number of reasons. It's quite problematic. Usually the answer is, well, just tell everyone, shout it out the windows. Everyone needs to know. And yes, absolutely, in an ideal world, but we don't live in an ideal world. Absolutely not at the moment. We are far from an ideal world. So then what about anyone who'll listen? Yeah, sounds great again, but there's also a problem in there too, because it would be fair to say that those who want to listen are already the converted. It's like me sitting here speaking to you, telling you how bad modern slavery is. You're already the converted. So the challenge I keep coming up against is how do you reach those unconverted, or how do you reach those on the edge and bring them into the collective circle? I think for someone else to listen to you, there needs to be some element of trust, right? There needs to be a reason for that person to listen to you over and above what you are actually saying or what you are talking about. I think they need to have care for you. So you've probably guessed where this is going. I think it starts with family, and I think it starts with close friends, and you can start really, really small. And it's almost the opposite of, and it's nothing, because it's wonderful work, the work of IJM and other big organizations who are trying to spread the message really wide. I think there's a place for that. But I also think there's a place for starting really, really small. Who's in your tight circle and how can you engage with them on this issue? When I began working in modern slavery, how terrible is that? When I began working in the modern slavery space, I actually started with my mum, right? Why are you buying from Amazon? Stop buying from Zara. Where'd you get that hat? You know, so we spoke about our buying habits, and almost through strength-based curiosity, we decided to do better, and we actually did it together. My dad's another story, but that's for the next fundraiser. So I said I promise I'd tell you. So here's where I might be a bit provocative. I'm not sure that anger. No, hang on. I'm going to be complimentary to what Audrey and Jonathan said before, and it's about anger. I think, yes, be angry, but understand how, where, and who to that anger manifests itself, right? Because if you direct your anger to another person, I don't believe you're telling them that you're angry. I think you're telling them that they're wrong. And you try to change the mind of someone who's been beaten down with how wrong they are, or when you've taken apart their belief systems and structures and how they've behaved for the last 20, 30, 40 years of their life. People don't change when they're told to change, or you've proved that everything they've done is wrong. That change of an individual has to come from within. And I believe that your anger, if it's misappropriated, may fail to ignite that which is inside them that could help move them towards some kind of change. Whoever you're talking to, make that person the hero of the story. Show them that change through love with an arm around them is actually so easy and within their reach. I do think we need to stop pointing the finger at fellow consumers and as I say, bring them in with an arm around the shoulder. Summing all this up, promise I'll be very quick. So most important thing out of all this, everything I've said, is easy first steps. We tell better stories that are human and not based on statistics. We appeal to listeners' heads, hearts, and ultimately their hands. And we start really, really small with family members. And here's where the movement part comes in, right? If everyone here, 27 of us, if we can commit to engaging with one other person a week, following those 3 steps, you know, and I am saying we are a collective, I'm saying we're a team. By the end of next week, we'll have reached 60 people. You can see where this is going. Week after, our collective, having brought them in, we're at 120, then 240, then 480, 5-6 weeks later. This small fundraiser that has been amazing to meet you all has reached 1,000 people. Yeah, I think that's all I've got to say.
Olly, you reached my heart and my head, and I thank you for that. That was amazing. You said so many things which are so profound there, and I think it's a really difficult one. I'm going to share something that someone here on the screen, but I'm not going to say who it was. I messaged them and I said, you know, how can we encourage more people to come to the fundraise? And she said to me, a lot of people don't actually give a shit, she said. And unfortunately, you know what? She's right. She's right. And you are right in that when you actually go and swing a stick at someone and tell them that they're wrong, that they are naturally, their hackles rise and their defenses rise, and immediately they revert to form and won't do as you are perhaps trying to coax them to do. And it's a really interesting thing, because one of the things when we started Just in Fashion, we were very particular and very clear about when we approached the brands that we didn't want to be I can't say it, the aggressive or the provocator, and say to them, actually what you're doing is wrong. It was that when we were trying to approach the brands, we're trying to say, well, actually we're doing it in a very sort of touchy-feely sort of manner. And in that way we think or believe that actually you get the best. And I think similarly, it's the same for our individuals and our consumers. I have to say, and I have to add this, that having given the book, Corban's book, to both my aunt, my mother, and 2 other cousins, they are now suddenly making different choices about their purchasing. So I will have to say Corban's book has proved to be absolutely, phenomenal for sharing that message. I am going to now wrap up. Thank you to all our speakers. I can see Jeff has got his has unmuted. I don't know if he wants to ask a question.
I think this is a great experience you have. I think with Christmas, let's just all buy a Corban book. Not sure where we can buy it because it's sold out, for all our friends. You need to stock up on Amazon or anywhere else first, Corban.
Yeah, I'll check into that.
Well, okay, we've now advocated all of Corban's books, so I think we're advocating it for our next 2 book clubs. So if anyone wants to join our next 2 book clubs, they're in November and December. So with haste, go buy your book, and then you can then join those book clubs. Again, thank you, though. That was quite phenomenal. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on a Thursday evening over Zoom. I know I keep emphasizing that point, but it's a fundraiser of sorts, of different sorts. Now, if everyone wants to go join a breakout room, please do. You have the choice of the 4 speakers. So we have a host inviting you to join breakout room now. Olly, I think we have Olly there, whoever wants to join, and they will all come up very quickly. Thank you again for your time for tonight. Bye, everyone.